What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Johners. This is episode 154, and today's a special AEW All Out pay-per-view review. It's a 2020 edition, so I want to welcome on board Big Chocky T, or Chris Thornton, from the Turnbuckle Arms. Chris, great to have you back on the Wrestling with Johners podcast. It's been a while, but great to have you back on to talk a bit about AEW, my friend.
Yeah, it certainly has been a while, and the world has changed a lot in that time. But as you know, I've been keeping myself busy with the Turnbuckle Arms guys and the Brood. Shout out to them, and quick shout out to Michael Jolly the Bear, for giving me company last night. We were essentially live tweeting and conversation all night as we watched it all out. And so he kept me going, which is good. Yeah, shout out to Michael. But yes, very good to be here again, I must say, and very much looking forward to discussing last night's events.
Indeed. I've got a funny feeling that the last time we had you on was AEW Revolution, which was in February. I'm pretty sure it's me and you. But and there we had the classic Young Bucks versus Kenny Omega and Adam Page tag team match for the world title. When it was a 6-star match as far as Dave Meltzer was concerned, and certainly a 5-star match in my heart. But it's really, really good. So you have been busy with the Turnbuckle Arms. I think you're into your 3rd or 4th month now. You kicked it off in June. You've got another episode happening next week, your 4th monthly edition. Give us a bit of a rundown as far as what you've covered on the Turnbuckle Arms. I mean, you've got a great bunch of guys there, a good team. You've got a bit of a family vibe going on between the 6 of you, really, really close. But what have we missed already from the Turnbuckle Arms, and what have we got to look forward to?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've discussed and discovered some of our favorite matches. Got to know the Brood a little better in episode 1. We dove into the cinematic universe in our last episode, which was probably my favorite episode to date. It's a great topic, and as you know, 2020 has forced a lot of creativity out of that, let's say, new genre or style, that's really come to fruition. But that's been a particular highlight. I'm really looking forward to the next episode, and I don't want to say too much ahead of time, but it's going to be Grizz's karaoke special. So I've picked a song, which I will not reveal as yet, but yeah, can't wait for that one. Get those earplugs ready. It's going to be great. But yeah, do check it out. Check out on our socials, Turnbuckle Arms Podcast. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure with the guys so far. Yeah, go back and check out some of the old episodes, and even the Swift's halves as well, where we break them down into mini episodes, about 30 minutes long, just the right amount for a nice walk.
Perfect. And you're all over Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You're on Turnbuckle TV, which is soon going to be Powered 4 TV, of course. You're also on the wrestlingwithjohners.com website. So that is the correct name for the website, Mr. Bayliss, if you're listening. But yeah, it's wrestlingwithjohners.com, where you find all of Wrestling with Johners podcast and the Turnbuckle Arms podcast as well. So let's talk a bit about AEW All Out. You had a late night. You watched it live. You were live tweeting. You were kind of watching it live. So you've had very little sleep. I decided to have an early night, and I watched it this morning. I say this morning, like you say, it was well over 4 hours in total if you include the buy-in. So I've just got done watching it myself. But going into it, before you sat down with your can of beer and your pack of Doritos, I'm sure, what was your feelings going into it? What were your thoughts and expectations? Any matches in particular that you were looking forward to?
Yeah, very much so. I consider All Out to be AEW's WrestleMania, I think, really. Certainly last year it seemed to have that feel with some of the matches on there. So I couldn't really miss it, to be honest. I've actually yet to miss an AEW pay-per-view, but this one in particular felt like I had to stay up and watch it. Having said that, even at the time, before it started, I felt like it was just a couple of matches short of a decent pay-per-view. But about a week before, they added the Broken Rules match, which we'll definitely cover later. And they also added Britt Baker and Big Swole to the main card. So I felt like with that extra push, they'd listened to the fans. And so for me, what I thought might have been just an incomplete card, they just added a little bit more in the last week to make me really want to watch that. So yeah, I was very much looking forward to it. I think, like I said, it's probably their biggest card of the year, or at least they tried to be. And yeah, with the fans in attendance, although greatly reduced numbers of them, it gave it that little bit of feel like this was back to a kind of proper pay-per-view after Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen that are kind of, this year they were on TV pretty much. So yeah, this was a return.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that the fans that attends the Daily's Place, Dynamites and AEW pay-per-view certainly make the difference. You can definitely feel a lot more atmosphere in that venue. But let's start. We've got 10 matches to discuss. 2 on the buy-in pre-show. The first match was Joey Janela with Sonny Kiss at ringside versus Serpentico with Dr. Luther at ringside. So this was an unannounced match, or maybe a last-minute announcement, and it was an okay match. I mean, this was, if I'm honest with you, my first proper experience of Serpentico. My only prior experience of Serpentico was when Sammy Guevara was wearing the Serpentico mask when he made his return to AEW last month. So there was plenty of interference on the outside from Dr. Luther in this one. Dr. Luther got his comeuppance when Sonny Kiss on the outside kind of attacked him, allowing Joey Janela to finish the match with a beautiful big elbow drop from the top to win the first match of the buy-in. So pretty good. Just quickly discuss the second match, and then I'll get your thoughts on the buy-in matches. But the Dark Order, Alex Reynolds and John Silver versus Private Party. So this match was announced in advance. We were expecting it. I was very impressed with Reynolds and Silver in this one. I thought they were fantastic. Some really good double team moves from Silver and Reynolds. Some very close near falls as well. And they created many of the highlights for me in this match as well. The ending came pretty much from out of nowhere, to be honest with you. Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn, they hit their gin and juice in a match that I really thought should have gone to the other team. Silver and Reynolds of the Dark Order. I was very impressed with them. Definitely a team I want to see more from in the future. So give us your thoughts on the buy-in matches then, Chris. I was particularly impressed with the second match, and the first match was unannounced, but Joey Janela picked up the win.
Yeah, both matches were decent. I think the second match, Private Party versus Dark Order, as you say, was a fantastic match, actually. And that's kind of, you nearly always want a high-flying tag match to be on any kind of kickoff show, as you know. Janela, I love Joey Janela, but I don't think that's the kind of match that would have hooked me in as a casual fan, I must say. It was okay, but there was nothing special about it. And like you, Serpentico, I know for the first couple of weeks, I actually thought it was Sammy Guerrero like the whole time.
Right.
Yeah, it just kept coming back, and I was like, is this still Sammy Guerrero? But it was that AEW thing of almost expecting you to know who talent is sometimes without properly introducing them. But yeah, that was an okay match. I love Sonny and Joey together. They're a great team. So yeah, it was good to see them both get their moments in, and good to see Joey get a win after being a sacrificial lamb to the demo god Chris Jericho last week. So moving on to Private Party, Dark Order. Silver and Reynolds, I'm not sure how much you've been watching being the Elite, but Dark Order are a massive part of that show now. They've very much got themselves over on that show, and that's probably what's led to their least recent resurgence. But as we'll find, as the night goes on, it wasn't a good night for the Dark Order, and I actually think it was the wrong time to give them a loss. They did look very impressive. The double team moves were fantastic. I think it was with his kicks, very vicious. They'd warned us of that. They looked, very decent. So yeah, I was surprised. The finish did almost come out of nothing, and the wrong time to have the Dark Order lose, especially if they were to then carry on in the rest of the night and lose again. So while you've got Brody Lee, doing a great job up there. Sorry, Mr. Brody Lee. But the rest of the guys, they needed some wins to kind of back that up now. And so yeah, it was a wrong decision for me, but a great match to kick off.
Yeah, it really was. But let's look at the main card then, Chris, because we had the commentary team of Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, along with Excalibur. And we pretty much jumped straight into the first match. And it was one of the matches that was originally announced for the buy-in pre-show. And it kicked off the main card, which I was very pleased with. Probably like yourself, with the build they've given this match, the build they've given these individuals, it certainly deserved to be on the main card. And maybe, through a bit of fan social media, fan interaction, they changed their mind at the last minute. But I was pleased to see it kicking off the main card. And of course, it was the tooth and nail match between Britt Baker and Big Swole. So this was a fun match. I think it was announced by Tony Khan earlier on in the week that it was going to be on location. And if you remember on last week's Dynamite, Big Swole told Britt Baker that she knew where she worked. Yeah. So we kind of got an idea that this was going to take place somewhere in a dental practice or a dental surgery somewhere. Whether this was a legit dental surgery or whether this was a legit Britt Baker's dental surgery is another thing altogether. But it certainly looked like a dental practice. So you had Big Swole turning up in a Rolls Royce on the outside. She goes into the dental practice. She's greeted by Reba. I don't think Reba recognised Big Swole straight away, tried to sign her in as a patient. They get into something. I think Reba gets cast to one side. Big Swole wanders around the dental practice looking for Britt Baker and then gets clobbered over the head with a frame certificate by Britt Baker from behind. The match exits the building where Swole places Baker into a wheelchair, running her into a wall of boxes. Reba or Rebel. Do you prefer to call it Reba or Rebel, Chris? Which is it for you?
I'm going to say Reba. Just sounds right. Yeah, but yeah, some of that it is from that name in itself and not knowing how to say it, I think. Yeah. Plays into it.
I'm sure she was called Rebel on the Indies, but that's probably where I know it from. But she gets thrown into a dumpster, which is quite fun. Britt Baker clobbers Swole with a crutch from out of the dumpster. They head back into the dental practice where they continue to fight from room to room. There's a stiff exchange between the two wrestlers, and Baker tries to finish off Swole with not a dentist drill, not a traditional dentist drill, but like a DIY home improvements a drill. But then Reba comes back in. She's got banana peel on her head, looking a bit of a state. She comes in with a syringe full of Novocaine, and Big Swole actually manages to gain control of this syringe, jabs it into Britt Baker's leg, giving her a bit of a numb leg there. Big Swole wins the match by putting Baker to sleep, placing her like a sleeping gas mask over her face, and the referee calls her the bell because Baker wasn't responding. So in this age of cinematic matches and on-location matches during the COVID era, Chris, did this one stack up for you? Was it fun? Was it a good way to kick off the show?
It was fun and it was interesting, but again, like if that's the first thing people are seeing, it's quite bizarre. You know, I do think matches like that should be maybe placed in the middle of the card, a bit of placement there. But as you said, it was kind of last minute fan pressure that maybe have bumped it up to the main card. And equally on the kickoff, that would have been interesting. I think everyone played their part really well in it. I was surprised Britt took the loss in her kind of home turf, let's say, in her office, you know. But at the same time, Swole deserved her revenge, definitely, you know. And that build's been fantastic. So I didn't want them to do a disservice and not include it on the main card. So, you know, good on you, Tony Khan. Good on the AEW fans for a bit of pressure there, I think. It was a good match. You have to use Novocaine. You have to use the sleeping gas. You know, you have to use all the dentist gimmicks, the massive drill, fantastic stuff. So I enjoyed it personally. Could have done one a bit longer, actually, I think. It seemed quite short to me. And yeah, maybe it would have been nice to do it as a cinematic match rather than a kind of on-location match, you know. And the way Britt was stalking about, like it was a horror film at the start, that would have played really quite well, I think, on like film instead. But the heel kind of resurgence of Britt has been the highlight, you know, for me of AEW, you know, in the last year. So we talked about it on Turnbuckle Arms. It's easily one of our favorite kind of transitions. She makes a natural heel and she's very funny too, you know, and having Reba Rebel there, like that just adds to that. So really, I think, you know, she could have done less and people still would have liked it. I think people are desperate to see Britt back in action. And that was a hell of a way to bring her back, I suppose. Certainly memorable. So yeah, you know, good fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this feud between Big Swole and Britt Baker is sure to continue. And with another pay-per-view just a couple of months around the corner, and we'll talk about that a bit later, I'm sure that'll be the next stop for this feud. But match number 2 on the main card, the Jurassic Express, accompanied by Marco Stunt, of course, versus the Young Bucks. So this match was only made this past Dynamite when these two teams were part of a foursome that won an 8-man tag. And of course, the winning team would face each other at All Out, hence this match. So this was a really impressive tag match. You're always going to get a good match when you've got the Young Bucks involved. I'm sure you'll agree with me there. But some of the highlights of the match, Chris, there was a trifecta of Northern Light suplexes. I think it was from Matt Buck, but before sending the Jungle Boy over into the crowd barrier on the outside with a final suplex, Marco Stunt got involved, pulling Nick Jackson of the apron, causing Nick to land face first onto the edge of the ring. That looks pretty painful. Luchasaurus goes on a bit of a rampage with choke slams, roundhouse kicks, a standing moonsault before hitting a moonsault off the ring apron onto both the Bucks on the outside. Jungle Boy suffers a powerbomb onto the ring apron. That always looks pretty painful. Matt Jackson delivers a wicked super kick to the head of Marco Stunt as payback for his earlier indiscretion. There's a tremendous close near fall from a draping top rope senton onto Jungle Boy. That looks pretty painful. Jurassic Express gets a close near fall from an extinction level event. Nice double T move there. But Luchasaurus springboards himself from the ring out into the fans. I'm sure he was going after one of the Bucks when he performed the move, but he only appeared to kind of land into a group of wrestlers on the outside. And after that, there was a double team or a double super kick and a BTE on the lonesome Jungle Boy back inside the ring. Matt Jackson hooks the leg, gets the pin, and in this really, really fast-paced, really fun match, Chris, I really enjoyed this one. There were several awesome spots from both teams. Unfortunately, it looks like Luchasaurus, however, cost his team the win or the potential win by hitting that springboard into the fans. So the Bucks get the win, and I don't know if it's going to cause any tension between the Jurassic Express somewhere down the line, but a good match. And like I say, these two teams in the ring together never kind of fail to impress.
Really fun match, and it's taken me a long while, I think, to properly get on board the Jurassic Express, if you excuse the pun. I know you've always been a fan, John. And, you have to love Luchasaurus. People talk about Nick Jackson having the best hot tag in the business. I think it's Luchasaurus. His kicks, everything he does is incredible with real grace, apart from that dive. And it wasn't his fault, because it was a great dive, but like you said, what was he even aiming for? I'm not sure if it was the way it was edited or the camera. It looked like a terrible misstep. And I thought, who are you even aiming for there? Jack Perry, Jungle Boy, Jack Perry, whatever you want to call him, or whatever JR calls him these days. He had a really good outing as well, I think. And Marco Stunt just makes me laugh just by being there and by proxy. It was a little bit heelish for Marco to get involved. And that's a problem I think they have as a face tag team. And also, there was no real need for this match to be on the card. Great as it was, that maybe should have been on the kickoff show. Not to devalue the talent in it, but given the match type and how exciting it was, and given the low stakes, all it really served to do was show the frustration of the Young Bucks, and I like that. Kind of add a little bit of fuel to their fire. And it highlighted Jurassic Express, but great match, but for what? And I think for that reason, perhaps it was wrongly placed on the card. But really enjoyed it. Really good outing by everyone. And the second best, tag match on the card, to be honest. Great stuff all around. I was quite impressed.
Yeah, absolutely. What were your thoughts on the casino battle royal? Now, we've had a few casino battle royals before, Chris. I think on most of the AEW pay-per-views, they tend to kind of roll out the casino battle royal. But like I say, this one seemed to have a bit more of a star-studded lineup going into it. A few more higher or top-tier wrestlers as opposed to the lower card wrestlers that have performed on previous casino battle royal. Of course, the stakes are always high in the casino battle royals because there's a world championship match kind of in the run-in for the winner. But before we talk about the casino battle royal, do you know the rules? For anybody that's not too familiar with the rules, tell us about how the wrestlers kind of enter the match then, Chris.
Yeah, I thought you'd ask me this. So I tried to...
Hope you've been taking notes.
As far as I know, the talent is split into decks of cards, so aces, spades, hearts, etc. And I believe it's every 2 minutes they all come out collectively, which I find a little bit rushed. And then finally, you've got the 21st entrants, who's the Joker, the wild card, if you were, and they, of course, come in last. It's typical elimination rules, over the top rope to eliminate. So that being said, it's probably more complicated than it has to be. I don't know why they bother. Why not just have them come out, like this, to be honest? I think it's unnecessarily gimmicky to have them in these, And again, I don't understand the casino thing if it's not Double or Nothing. I don't know why it's a casino. I don't know, maybe if we saw...
It's kind of their gimmick, isn't it? It's their gimmick. Yeah, I understand your points there, but let's get into the match because, as you said, there were 4 groups of 5 and a mystery 21st wrestler who will come out as the wild card, the Joker. But Group 1 consisted of Trent Beretta, Christopher Daniels, Jake Hager, The Blade, and Ray Phoenix. So during the first 3 minutes when these 5 were in the ring, I don't think there was any eliminations. There was plenty of hard-hitting action with Ray Phoenix living dangerously by doing some top rope maneuvers as Ray Phoenix does. Then Group 2 came out, which consisted of Frankie Kazarian, Will Hobbs. I think that was Will Hobbs. Not too familiar with that gentleman, but Santana, Ortiz, and Chuck Taylor. Now, there were several eliminations here, including The Blade, including Christopher Daniels. Group 3 came out. So it was a Billy or Billy Gunn, Penta L0M, Ricky Starks, Brian Cage, and Darby Allin. So Darby Allin got a tremendous pop when he came out for Group 3 here. Brian Cage quickly eliminated Billy, and Ray Phoenix got eliminated on the rampway. Chuck Taylor got sent back in 2. Then Group 4 came out, Chris, and there was Sean Spears was the first entrant from Group 4. He spent a couple of minutes jaw-jacking at the commentary desk with JR and the like before he goes to the ring. There was also the likes of Eddie Kingston, the Butcher, along with Sonny Kiss and the Murder Hawk, Lance Archer, of course. He gets in, he immediately launches himself over the top rope with a reckless abandon. There were several eliminations here before Matt. Sorry, not Matt. Yes, it was Matt. Getting confused with Mike Seidel, who I interviewed a few weeks ago. Matt Seidel, slightly older brother of Mike, but Matt Seidel came out as the 21st man, the Joker, the wild card. And it wasn't a great introduction to Matt Seidel and AEW. He kind of went up to the top rope, tried to do his kind of trademark shooting star press, and unfortunately kind of slipped on the ropes, landed very awkwardly, and it looked very painful. Looked like he was kind of quite upset and quite hurt at the same time, slipping off that top rope, landed on his head. Not a great or ideal way to start his AEW career. Darby Allin eliminates Ricky Starks. Starks then gets a body bag out from under the ring. Now, normally it's Darby Allin's gimmick with the body bag, but I think these two are feuding, so there was a body bag with Darby Allin's name on it, and he throws it into the ring. Brian Cage opens it up and also has a bag of thumbtacks. Now, we've seen thumbtacks in AEW quite a lot recently, but he pours his bag of thumbtacks into the body bag, promptly drops Darby Allin into the body bag, zips it up, as painful as hell, and then lifts him up and dumps him out over the ring, which I thought was terribly dangerous, very, very unsafe, because Darby Allin can't protect himself, can't see where he's going, can't see how he's going to land. I don't know if it's a spot they rehearsed. I get the feeling they didn't, certainly not with the thumbtacks anyway, but that must have been really, really painful. But that's Darby Allin out of the match. Now, there's some thumbtacks over one half of the ring for the rest of the competitors, which I would not have liked to have been in that ring with them thumbtacks flying around. There's a big hoss fight between Brian Cage and Lance Archer before Archer hits a double drop kick, sending both Hobbs and Cage out of the ring for a double elimination there. Out of the ring, sorry. Matt Seidel is next eliminated, leading to Kingston and Archer fighting it out on the top rope on the ring apron on the turnbuckles. And after a distraction from Jake Roberts on the outside, Lance Archer was successfully able to eliminate Kingston with a huge choke slam onto the Butcher and the Blade on the outside. So Lance Archer, if I can get his name right, I hope he's not listening to this, wins the Casino Battle Royal, and eventually he'll be going on to face the AEW World Champion, Chris, as the new #1 contender. So it was quite an entertaining Battle Royal. Give us your thoughts on this, some of the spots, some of the highlights for you, and the winner.
Yeah, I think AEW struggle with these matches. I've got to say, I've not, maybe apart from the first ever Double or Nothing one, I've never really enjoyed them. I like mini feuds in these battle royales, I like how they play out, but and I can't get enough of Ricky Starks. I don't know what it is about him. He's a natural born performer. Team Taz, I love him and Cage together. So I'd like to have seen Allin and Starks have their match 1-on-1, and I'm sure it will come down the line, but they've already built it so much, and I couldn't believe that they didn't go ahead with that. Incredibly reckless move, as you say, with the body bag. So I worry for Allin. And when he was unzipped, I genuinely thought he was out of it. He genuinely looked done. Overall, yeah, there's some good spots, but yeah, I don't know why. It just feels like a mess, and some of the spots take too long to set up, and it's very kind of hard to suspend your disbelief for too long, like the body bag stuff. But overall, I was really pleased with Lance as the winner.
Yeah.
He is legitimate monster. Yeah, he actually scares me a little. And you're right. I hope he isn't listening. But the other thing about that is, one, it's a rematch with Jon Moxley, and their New Japan Pro Wrestling match was fantastically violent,
incredible,
structured. Yeah, beautiful. So I can't wait to see that again. And two, I think. I don't know. Something about having Eddie Kingston in there. I actually thought he might have won it. He came very close, obviously, but suddenly we had to know that Eddie Kingston had a fear of snakes, and maybe that's something that the world knows and I don't. But suddenly, yeah, we had to be told he had a fear of snakes, and
that was a weird and fairly awkward situation where Jake Roberts was kind of opening up the bag. Kingston didn't seem to react too much to it. And it just seemed like Jake Roberts being an old man as he is with a bag of whatever, whether there was a snake in there but he just seemed that bit didn't work for me, and I don't think it works for many people.
No, I agree. It was weird, and yeah, Kingston's already become a lot of people's favourites in AEW. He certainly impressed me. I hadn't seen a lot of him before, and then to suddenly have this fear of snakes or fear of a pillowcase, whatever was in there, because it didn't anything to me. That was quite disappointing. But yeah, glad Archer's won it. I think my only thing, again, with a lot of people agree with this, is that it's a shame he's had that loss to Cody, because now it ruins that kind of aura he had going up against Moxley. And I'll talk about this Moxley problem later, but yeah, I think they're struggling for legitimate challenges for him, because he's putting away these big men too easily, and Archer's just another big man, and I can see him doing it again. But having said that, I think if it's the right winner, maybe Allen should have been a little more, but as long as they carry on this Starks-Allen feud, I'll be happy with that, because if that's the end of that, not happy, because it deserves its own. Those two could be, incredible, and I'd love to see them go for about half an hour or so, not just relegated to a little bit part in the Battle Royal.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a big pay-per-view match the next pay-per-view Full Gear involving that collection of wrestlers anyway. But big blow-off match is definitely deserved. Let's talk about, speaking of scary spots with Darby Allin and the body bag, let's talk about Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara then, because this was the advertised and aforementioned Broken Rules match. Now, we quickly established that it was going to be taking place at the Jacksonville Jaguars American Football Stadium, which is certainly where it started. The added stipulation to this, Chris, was that if Matt Hardy loses, he must leave AEW. Now, I don't know whether that kind of presents a bit of a spoiler as to kind of the end of the match to many people. Our first sight of Sammy Guevara was him riding this cart. I don't know if it was a golf buggy, but it's very reminiscent of when Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy ran Sammy over a couple of months back, and that tremendous bump that sent Sammy spinning in midair. But Sammy didn't manage to, he kind of crashed into some barrels, into some boxes. So Matt Hardy avoided that one. Sammy then got DDT'd onto a picnic table. Then they fight their way up onto this like scissor lift or cherry picker nearby then, Chris. And there's a bit of a back and forth exchange upon the cherry picker. And then Sammy Guevara manages to spear Matt Hardy off the cherry picker. Now, they must have been maybe 10 feet, which is high enough, to be honest with you, and down onto this merchandise table down below. And Matt Hardy took a tremendous bump, and almost immediately it looked like he caught the back of his head on the concrete floor. There was no padding near that merchandise table. So Sammy Guevara goes for a bit of a walk. The referee checks, and almost immediately we thought the match was over. The referee was calling for the end of the match after that horrible landing from that spear. Aubrey Edwards, the referee, she appears very concerned for Hardy. She calls for Dr. Sampson. Dr. Sampson checks on her. Now, she puts up the X and kind of calls for the end of the match. So we all thought that was the end of the match. And to be honest with you, when we first saw Matt Hardy try to get up, he struggled to his feet. He fell over a few more times. His face was a funny colour as well. I'm sure his face was more of a purpley blue colour. So I don't know if he was just struggling to catch his breath or whether it had affected him that badly. But then Sammy Guevara goes on a walk. We realise he's starting to walk from the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium through to Dahlia's place, which is next door, of course. Matt Hardy's following him. And the next thing you know, that the match has been resumed, restarted, continued, and the next thing we know, that they're climbing onto the stage. They're climbing up this scaffolding gantry area. Matt Hardy wallops Sammy Guevara. He goes flying probably 15 to 20 feet off of this scaffolding down onto part of the stage area below. He was unable to kind of answer the referee's count of 10, Chris, and Matt Hardy, still not looking right, in my opinion, won the match. So I'm guessing that they followed through on what was planned for the match, and they followed through on the planned result and the planned winner. But once again, another kind of poor decision on my eyes, where they really should have had the interests, health and well-being kind of front and centre here, regardless of the stipulation, regardless of the angle, and they should have stopped the match kind of 5 minutes in after that spear. But give us your thoughts on what went down here. It wasn't much of a match, but like I say, a couple of highlights to talk about, and certainly that spear off the scissor lift was one to talk about.
Yeah, this match was definitely something I was really looking forward to, actually. It's been a great feud. It's almost been cursed, though, from the start. Let's not forget, Sammy really bust up Matt Hardy pretty bad with that large kind of heavy chair. So, yeah, they've had a bit of a bad run into this. But I was really looking forward to it. And when I saw Sammy in the golf cart, big smile on my face. You know, I actually love Sammy. He's fantastic. So to see it end so quickly and abruptly was a real shame, because I get the feeling there was going to be some really creative spots, some really funny stuff. I know Hardy's got it in him. We all remember the Stadium Stampede match. So, you know, for me, it was a tragedy of the night. Now, of course, I say tragedy. The real tragedy would be Matt Hardy if something really bad had happened. He says he cannot die, but he nearly did. And you know what these Hardys are like. Of course, he said he was fine to carry on. He spent his whole career taking massive bumps like that. You know, it's part of his gimmick almost, this never say die attitude. And Aubrey Plaza did the right thing by trying to shut it down. And it's got a lot of flack, this match, and AEW are struggling to kind of compensate for what happened. They did call an audible and skip to the end, which was fine. But once you've seen that spot, it didn't matter what happened next. It was never going to be as impactful as that. And why have that scissor lift spot so early on in the match? It's clearly a big risk. So, yeah, real shame that they didn't finish that match, because they did, but they didn't have the whole length of it.
Of course.
I am glad he's okay, Matt. It was just fascinating to watch in a morbid way, to see them work on the fly like that, you know, on a pay-per-view. I mean, what do you do in these situations? So they did call an audible. He shouldn't have been climbing up that scaffolding, Hardy. You know, he really was concussed. It was quite sickening to watch him stumble around. Like you said, he had changed colour. I think they did the best they could in the situation. But for me, yeah, real shame. Not just for the botch, but for the fact that I think he's had a bit of a rough time of it recently, and this won't help his reputation, to be honest, either. You know, he's getting a bit of an unsafe reputation now. So a real shame and a real dampener on it, because, yeah, I think that had the potential to be one of the highlights of the night.
Yeah, but it's almost as if they booked themselves into a corner, Chris, because they added this extra stipulation, which was completely unnecessary. They didn't need to add that stipulation that if Matt Hardy loses, he has to leave AEW. I know that they got this bitter feud between the two of them, but that stipulation, you know, didn't make sense. It almost gives away the ending to the match anyway, because Matt Hardy is still fairly fresh with AEW. He's only been there a few months, and to kind of get rid of him through a storyline angle just seems a little bit ridiculous. That's the sort of thing that WWE would do, not AEW would do. And as I said, they appeared to book themselves into a corner, so they had to go to, you know, unsafe territory to complete the match one way, shape or form, so that Matt Hardy would get his hand raised. And I've got my issues with this match, and I've got my issues with the decision to continue this match, regardless of whether Matt Hardy felt that he was fine to continue. Like you say, he's made a career on saying he was okay when he probably wasn't. He's probably had more concussions than many wrestlers out there, but a bit of an unwise decision. And I mean, I've kept off social media today because I didn't want any spoilers. I wanted to see All Out with a fresh pair of eyes. But you say that he's getting quite a bad rap online then, Chris? Very
much so, yeah. People are not a fan of it continuing, which is great to see, you know, the love for Hardy, and it shows how much people do love him. And he is very lovable. but also that's what makes him lovable, isn't it? You know, that's his character, you know, so he had to like play up to that, I think, a little. I mean, really, you shouldn't ask anyone concussed any questions. Rather, you know, it should be just, you're going to the hospital. It shouldn't be, are you okay? Because are they going to give you a sound mind answer? No. You're right. I hate that stipulation, actually, like you said, because it does give away the winner. The only thing they could have done, I suppose, is come back as a different Hardy personality, but they've already done that, you know, and it is a shame, because that's the end of that feud, I think, one way or another now. You know, Sammy's been deleted, but it was just unfortunate, having seen what had happened. Yeah, like falling into a clearly rehearsed spot with the soft kind of landing, you know, you just didn't mean anything after you'd seen that horrific botch earlier, because you knew how bad it could get. It was a real healthy reminder, though, I think, to everyone, that how dangerous the sport can be, you know. So in a way, sometimes it's when that stuff happens, it's a real wake-up call to people. They don't have to take stunts like that. Hardy doesn't at his age have to be doing that. You know, his character work alone is enough to get him through. And I don't feel any you know, bad ill will towards Sammy. I guarantee that probably wasn't even his idea. He's great at taking spots, but he probably wasn't that comfortable in kind of delivering that spear. So yeah, no pressure on him, I think. But I feel for him, because yeah, that's 2 in a row now, plus the allegations he had. And not even allegations, they were true. You know, he's got to be having a tough couple of months now, actually. So I feel for both of them in this situation.
Yeah, and I mean, you could tell that AEW were suffering quite a bit of flack during the broadcast, because they were trying to cover themselves. On a couple of occasions, they were kind of giving us updates on Matt Hardy and basically saying, well, he said he was fine to continue, and then he said, well, we didn't listen to him. Dr. Sampson checked him out and gave him the all clear. Well, you know, they seem to be changing their story, but and always passing the buck, so to speak. But let's talk about the next match anyway, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot more said about Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara on other podcasts and other news outlets. But Thunder Rosa, the current NWA Women's Champion, versus Shida, Hikaru Shida, the AEW Women's Champion, of course. Now, as we're aware, Thunder Rosa, the current NWA Women's Champion, her championship not on the line in this one. Chris, only the AEW Women's Championship on the line in this one. Give us your thoughts on Thunder Rosa being included into this match, because I think she's a great addition to the match, a great addition to the AEW roster, if that's the way it's going to kind of happen. However, it doesn't say too much about the strength and the depth of the rest of the AEW Women's division, does it?
Exactly, and that's the point, isn't it? You know, it reminded me of Cody's Open Challenge in a way, which is, it's great to see this talent come in. She is the NWA champion. I didn't know this, and I've got it written down here. Also, the Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling International Princess Champion, which is a hell of a title. Shame she didn't have it with her. So, yeah, it was great to see that involvement from her. And you've hit the nail on the head there, John. Who else did they have? You know, maybe Britt down the line, but we also discussed this on our podcast before. Who have they got now, you know, that can continue to challenge her? She was probably the best hope. Maybe they couldn't give her the win because they don't know, maybe it's just a one shot, they don't know the length of the contract. I understand that, but I maybe thought she was going to win it, Thunder Rosa. You know, it was a great match, 16 minutes, it's good length of time. Obviously everyone was begging for them to give those two women the time they deserved, and they did get it. So I guess ultimately I shouldn't be that surprised that she didn't win, Thunder Rosa. I would love to see more of her. I'd love to see more just NWA talent in general. But yeah, I think you're right. Maybe it's not scraping the barrel. Maybe it's reaching, for the talent when they should be having matches lined up, well in advance without having to go elsewhere, especially if that talent then loses, and which gives them nowhere to go with that same talent, really. There was maybe it would have been nice to see a kind of cheap finish or a roll up, but it was quite a clean finish. You know what I mean? So where does she go from there, Thunder Rosa? Anyway.
Well, let's talk a bit about the match, because there were some highlights. I was very, very impressed with Thunder Rosa in this match. I thought she was fantastic. She definitely brought a lot of passion, a lot of aggression, some really cool spots. There was Shida came back with a running knee on the outside after a bit of back and forth. Thunder Rosa, who got a close near fall from a Death Valley driver on the ring apron. There was lots of knee strikes and running big boots on the outside. There was a meteora spot from Shida onto Thunder Rosa on the rampway. That was pretty impressive. Shida hits a Falcon Arrow on Thunder Rosa, with Thunder Rosa kicking out on the 1 count. So that showed a fair bit of dominance. But we are getting towards the end of the match, and the match turned into more of a fist fight towards the end. You can tell that they're both getting quite exhausted. I mean, the match went about 16 minutes, as you said, and there was a Tomashi, a running knee from Shida, like shining wizard you could say, running knee, brought an end to the match. This really, really hard fought, really fun match as well. Shida managing to retain. And probably the best match I've seen Shida have since winning the championship. Certainly since winning the championship. I want to see more of Thunder Rosa. Ideally, it would be great if she could wrestle on AEW for a bit longer, a few more matches. But it depends when NWA starts up again, if they start up again. But give us your thoughts on this match then, Chris.
Yeah, so it was entertaining. Yeah, it was a good length, 16 minutes, as we said. So I was really pleased it got the time. It just shows you that if you have the matching talent, you can produce magic. So Shida deserved someone like that to go up against. Thunder Rosa had interesting. I'm not sure if you'd seen this. She'd had Serena, ex WWE.
Deebs.
No,
yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, she was on Dynamite. And that was a great match because, of course, it was. Serena's fantastic. So they just need to keep having those top quality matches. They need to bring in the talent like that because, aside from maybe a feud with Britt, I feel like they haven't got that many options. And it's a real shame because, again, AEW started off its women's division so strong, I thought, and I think it had a lot of talent. And it still does. But I think they're suffering with legitimate number one contenders for Shida now. She looks so good and so strong and just a great all-rounder. Anyway, back to the match. Yeah, great vicious knee strikes. I particularly like the spot where Shida was ran into the corner. Thunder Rosa followed up with both knees into her back. It's very vicious looking. And there was actually some nice camera work throughout the night, that cameras from the turnbuckle actually a couple of times that highlighted stuff like that. It was really... Yeah, I was only a little bit disappointed, I think, that she had just won, in that fashion, which I think was a clean finish, where I'd like to have seen, maybe a roll-up, and she just inched the win, and maybe a shake of the hand afterwards, that kind of match where you've had a real battle, you respect each other, but there's more to come down the line. It just felt like a very, flat kind of definitive end to the match. But good match, really good.
Yeah, it really was. I'm sure that the AEW management and executive backstage are going to do everything they can to get Thunder Rosa on another match, or maybe, potentially sign her somewhere down the line to a full-time contract. But very impressed with her. And if she does get signed, it's going to be good news for the AEW women's division. I mean, talking about names for the future and potential opponents for Shida, I mean, you mentioned Britt Baker, of course. And although it'd be face versus face, I'd like to see her go up against Big Swole, maybe. I still like Nyla Rose. I still think Nyla Rose... now that she's got the added kind of extra thing with Vicky Guerrero being alongside, I think that could be an interesting pairing in the future. But I think they need to rebuild Nyla Rose to a certain degree. I think that she's lost quite a bit of the dominance that she had before. But then where'd you go after that? So, there isn't really any kind of dominant women that could potentially take the crown from Shida. So we shall see what happens there. And then we had quite a fun backstage segment with Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford announcing that they just got engaged to be married, and that they will be married on AEW somewhere down the line, where it's going to be saved for a pay-per-view, where we're going to have Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth all over again. But on next week's Dynamite, or this week's Dynamite, Kip Sabian is going to introduce his best man, and he called him the best man. So I don't know whether that's a giveaway as to who the best man is likely to be, but that's quite fun. And then another little dig at WWE at the very end there, when he had this big card shamelessly plugging his Kip Sabian's Twitch account, fully approved by All Elite Wrestling. So that was quite fun, considering all the headlines that WWE have been grabbing with their stars' YouTube and Twitch accounts. But then we get into the next match, then, Chris, the Dark Order, featuring Brody Lee, Colt Cabana, Stu Grayson, Eva Lunu versus Scorpio Sky, Matt Cardona, Dustin Rhodes, and QT Marshall. So to start the match, there was a big schmoz between all 8 wrestlers in the ring and brawling around the ring on the outside. This match was pretty good. I quite enjoyed it for what it was. There's some big... usually when you get big multi-man matches, Chris, they do get a bit messy in places and a bit too busy for my liking. Matt Cardona looked pretty good, I have to say. His radio silence and a somersault sent on to the outside. The Dark Order nearly had the match won after a deep 6 from Brody Lee and a frog splash from Colt Cabana. And the end of the match came when from a gigantic lariat from Brody Lee on Dustin, setting up Colt Cabana perfectly just to hook the leg and take the pin. But instead, Colt decides to waste time, climb up to the top rope, attempt to moonsault, which Dustin rolls out the way and avoids before Cabana gets rolled up himself by Dustin with the schoolboy for the 1, 2, 3. So after the match, Brody Lee scolds Colt Cabana before storming off backstage. So looks like there's a bit of storyline development there with Brody Lee not being too impressed with Colt Cabana, having been his kind of his star pupil, you could say, in the Dark Order up until now. But it's an enjoyable match. But what were your thoughts on that and the way the match ended, Chris?
Yeah, some good good moments. I think some interesting things I'd like to point out, really. Like, one, Scorpio Sky came out to his own entrance music with his own video now. And I think, okay, now, I don't know if you remember way back when you probably talked about Double or Nothing. I'd kind of picked Sky to be the breakout star of SCU, given his age and his talent. And it looks like they're doing that now. Much as it's a shame, that little introduction he had, I thought, okay, this isn't the SCU music. Maybe it's time to pull that trigger now. Maybe I've missed it on Dynamite, but as far as I know, that's the first time he's come out to that. So that looks good for him. But then, of course, you've lumped him straight away into a multi-man match, which I'm not really sure, why he's in there. It was the right finish to not have Lee get pinned, of course. But I can't get on board with this storyline from the start. I know he lost a few matches, so have a lot of talent, but he just doesn't seem like the guy. He's a sharp man. He's a smart businessman. I don't think he ever would have joined that Dark Order. And I was actually praying that would be the end of that storyline, but it looks like it will keep going. I'd love to see him turn, of course, and maybe that will happen. But yeah, good match overall. Scorpio Sky got his stuff in. Dustin Runnels afterwards delivered a fantastic promo where he was told that I think this Wednesday he'll be challenging Lee for the TNT Championship, which might ultimately lead to a Cody versus, Dustin rematch, which would be fantastic for everyone. The emotion on his face, it's like he genuinely just found out. And maybe he had, he couldn't believe it. He was like a schoolboy, and you can't get enough of Dustin's kind of natural enthusiasm at his age. So I'm really pleased for him. The match in the first place, it seemed like a bit of a mess of just people putting together. But Matt Cardona, again, love the name Radio Silence. That's a great finisher. He's doing okay for himself. But again, like Scorpio Sky, I think they need to break him away from this straight away. I don't think it's the right way to introduce another of Cody's friends and seemingly another to the never-ending addition of the Nightmare family. It gets bigger every week. It's the wrong way to kind of push people, I think, as newcomers, into the game, I suppose. But it continues the feud between the Nightmare family and Dark Order, and it sets up something quite tantalizing. Maybe Cody's return, if Dustin gets a real kick in. But we'll see. But yeah, good match overall, good progression. Didn't feel misplaced on the card, I don't think, and everyone got some good shots in. But again, Dark Order losing, and I think it's a bit of revenge, but I think now is the time to keep pushing because they finally got that legitimacy that they've been missing since.
Exactly.
So why do that now? They lost earlier, they lost again tonight, and it's only Brody Lee that still doesn't continue to look like a schmuck in that group. So they need to work hard on that to take that moment they've had now and just keep pushing it and get them over even further.
Yeah, like you say, just when they start to be building, seem to be building a bit of a fan base and a bit of legitimacy, certainly with Brody Lee being the TNT champion. The dominant performance over Cody a few weeks ago on Dynamite, which was fantastic. And kind of losing two matches on the bounce, not good for them. But let's talk about the match for the AEW World Tag Team Championship then, Chris. Hangman Adam Page, Kenny Omega versus FTR. So, I've got the distinct feeling, and I think it was me and you that covered the Young Bucks versus Page and Omega match back in February. But that was an incredible match, as we mentioned at the top of the podcast. Really, really was. And that was only at the end of February. And it seems kind of like a lifetime ago now, because that's back when they had fans in one of their bigger arenas. I'm sure it's a really, fantastic atmosphere. But that was also around the time, and it may have been before that, where Adam Page kind of started the kind of drinking angle, and I think he probably started it at the back end of 2019. So, probably better a lion's share of a whole 12 months now, Chris, that they've been doing this angle of Adam Page doing this drinking angle, and the kind of the fractious or maybe slightly spiky relationship between him and Kenny Omega. So talk about long-term booking and long-term storylines. They've been a champion for a fair while now, but this kind of partnership in this angle with this drinking angle, this spiky relationship between these two, have been a decent bit of long-term booking. But give us your thoughts on kind of where we are with these two. We'll talk about the match in a minute, and then of course FTR being included into the mix. You've of course got the Young Bucks on the fringes, but it says a lot for long-term booking, a long-term storyline, doesn't it?
It's fantastic long-term booking because the Young Bucks are involved as well. And I see these matches as potentially a trilogy, with it ending with the Bucks versus FTR to finally win the titles. It would be a great story. But yeah, they play into it too. It covers being the elite as well. It like you said, I don't think they've always known exactly where they want to go with it, because it's been teased for so long. But I do think it's been a real emotional roller coaster. And that was some of the kind of feedback I got on social media last night, was that people were really feeling emotional. I was. This is the match I, basically had sold me on it. And I knew it was going to be great. Great psychology, great pacing. But in terms of where we are with these two, it could have gone any number of ways. We could have had the Bucks involved as revenge for Hangman costing them their chance at the title. We could have had Hangman heel turn. We could have had the long teased Kenny heel turn. And I guess we are having that, which I'm happy about. But it just, it had one of those fantastic kind of mix of elements where you just weren't sure how that finish was going to come. And in the end, it was a pretty plain and simple finish, which I enjoyed. I'm glad it didn't have to rely on any outside interference, but where they are, yeah, it's fantastic. They've done a bit of a kind of double turn, I suppose. It only makes Paige look quite sympathetic, given the way and what happened after the match. But I mean, just on a side note, Paige looked fantastic. He really is a star. And him and Omega gel really well together. Sad to see him lose, but yeah, it continues, and that tells you how good long-term story telling can be, because it's giving you all these off ramps. The main story continues down the ramp, but you've got all these little off routes they could take at any one point, and the change could happen. So not knowing what was going to happen made that match really special, I think.
Yeah, and just to cover some of the highlights of the match, because there were many highlights in this one. FTR nearly got the pinfall from a Power and Glory superplex and top rope splash combo. Absolutely loved it. I loved it when Jim Powers and Hercules used to do it back in the early 90s, and now FTR are kind of bringing that one back. There was a tremendous somersault plancher from Adam Page from the top turnbuckle onto both members of the FTR on the outside. That was pretty special. There was a double flying headbutt spot from FTR as well. And two kind of Steiner Brother-esque bulldog spots, one on the outside and one on the inside of the ring, getting a close near fall with the second attempt. So that was another throwback and a really good move from those two. There was a brilliant kind of Spanish fly top rope fall away slam from Adam Page towards the end, before Page beckons Omega to attempt a second attempt at their V-trigger buckshot lariat. However, Dax Harwood managed to avoid the lariat, and then he ducks the V-trigger, only for Kenny Omega to nail his own partner, of course. FTR take advantage of this. They hit two spiked pile drivers on Adam Page and cover and get the victory to become new AEW World Tag Team Champions. So, like you say, a simple ending in the end. They did have to hit the spiked pile driver twice, which I suppose to become new champions, you want to kind of put an exclamation point on it to make sure the guy doesn't kick out. But after that V-trigger that he took from Kenny Omega, they probably could have got the 3 count off of that. Instead, they went for the 2 pile drivers. A hell of a match. It probably went about 20 minutes or so, but really, really good match. You certainly noticed the difference when FTR were in control of the match as opposed to the other two. The pace of the match kind of slowed down. They kept the action in their half of the ring, a lot more groundwork. It was a lot more fast-paced when Omega and Page were in the ring. Some really cool high spots there. Very good match. New champions crowned. But as we mentioned earlier on, the bigger talking point coming out to this is the actions of Kenny Omega, looking like he was about to hit his partner, Adam Page, with like some sort of folding table from ringside before thinking better of it and then storming backstage, showing little remorse for his partner, to be honest with you. And then kind of storming through Daly's place into his car, ignoring the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks kind of ignored Omega's advances to jump in the car and head back to their place of residence. And it looks like there's some kind of dissension there involving Omega and a subtle heel turn, or maybe not so subtle heel turn from Kenny Omega, but some interesting storyline development following the match then, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. People have been crying out for the Omega of old. That's certainly the Kenny Omega I fell in love with. The cleaner, the heel Omega. He's charismatic. He's already such a fantastic athlete, but people want that kind of fun and vicious and nasty, but comical kind of side back to him. Yeah, it would be great to see this. I think it was so good because anyone could have hit anyone with a chair at the end, but what he did was pity him. He let him just drop down. He was such disdain for his ex-partner now. Yeah, and that was brilliant. And this is why Omega is highly regarded. It's not just his athleticism, it's his emotion. He knows how to show that on his face. So I was really pleased to see that. I think it could have been improved if it would have been Omega who'd cost the match rather than Kenny, because surely then you could have placed blame on Adam a bit more. Really great long-term story behind that. Shout out to FTR. They worked over Kenny's legs so realistically for so long, and they make you slow down and watch. They remind me of an old time film where you just have to sit and watch the action, and instead of just cutting around, they kind of focus on that one body part. Great stuff. And deserving tag champs, absolutely. And I really can't wait for this eventual Young Bucks FTR showdown, which should be the greatest tag team match of all time. But in terms of Kenny, good stuff. I look forward to that heel turn. I look forward to Adam Page having that kind of sympathy, and he'll climb his way back, this mountain of retribution that he has to climb now. He'll get back there. The Young Bucks are the X factor in this, and this is what I love. This is what I mean. You're still not sure where this storyline is going. Who will turn on who here, who remains in the Elite, and who's out. So the fact that it's still open ended now after that, it gives me chills. I think it's brilliant that they've had that match, this match, and eventually, you'll have a Young Bucks FTR match, which will still have some of this storyline lingering in it, I think.
Yeah, and I know we've discussed this point before, Chris, in other podcasts, but whereas the AEW women's division is seen as kind of quite a weak division within AEW as a whole, their tag team division is certainly the strongest division that they can look at, and certainly one of the, if not the strongest tag team in any promotion across the world, definitely up there. They've got so many options, and it looks like we're going to be getting an FTR Young Bucks match at Full Gear, which is the next pay-per-view. They announced that later on in the show, taking place in 2 months' time on Saturday, the 7th of November. So not too long around the corner, 2 months away until we get Full Gear, and we're at least, well, we're kind of hoping, unless they kind of try to drag us along the road even further. Hopefully we're going to get FTR versus Young Bucks in 2 months' time, and that's 2 months to help to build up that storyline and to get us more hyped for that match, as if we haven't been kind of looking forward to that match for long enough anyway, Chris. But there we go. Let's talk about the next match then. So I think this is the second to last match, and it's Chris Jericho, Le Champion, the Demo God, versus Orange Cassidy in a Mimosa Mayhem match. So no DQ, no count out. The match can only be won by pinfall, submission, or by putting your opponent into one of two vats of Mimosa. So have to be honest, after their last encounter on Dynamite a few weeks back, I wasn't very hyped for this one going into it, to be honest with you. I thought that the added stipulation of having the vats or the tanks of Mimosa kind of lessens my interest in the match, to be honest with you. But when you kind of saw it all laid out and you saw the video package before the match, and they've had a good feud, putting aside how their last match ended a few weeks back, I was kind of into it by the time the bell rang. But leading into this match, where was your interest level then, Chris?
Not very high, John. This feud has been going on for 14 weeks, which they called out on air, which is too long. Jericho's very smart. He knew how to get Cassidy over, which he has, but he'd already done that. He didn't have to keep going. And I love Jericho playing up for a bit of comedy as well. So this was perfect for him. But it might have been just a step too far in terms of him being humiliated by Cassidy. As the match went on, it piqued my interest a little. But going into it, no, I just didn't care. And it was in the death spot, between the main event and the previous match. And everyone knows that spot is the killer spot. The crowd has completely had the, air sucked out of them at that point. They've expended all their energy on the previous match. So, they did the best they could. And it was gimmicky enough to keep the interest. But I think we all knew who was going to win it from the start. It was okay. It was fun. But for me, I had very little interest going into this.
Yeah, I mean, it did have some highlights, Chris. I mean, I certainly liked the power bomb that Chris Jericho did through the champagne table by the side of the ring. That looked pretty impactful. I don't know, there's some sort of glass tray or plastic tray that exploded on impact there. There was several attempts to get one another in the vats of mimosa. I think Jericho had his leg or his foot in there. I know Cassidy had a hand and maybe his head in there at one point, but it had to be the entire body go into the vat for the winner to be announced. Towards the end of the match, we see a Superman punch and a running PK from Orange and a mid-air code breaker from Jericho. But after Orange Cassidy managed to wriggle his way out of an attempted like Razor's Edge or Splash Mountain powerbomb, it was Cassidy who connected with another Superman punch, sending Jericho backwards into the vat of mimosa, giving the win to Orange Cassidy. And I thought these two, you know, they gave us a better match than I was expecting going into it. So I was happy with the end result as opposed to what I was expecting before the bell rang. So I was pleasantly surprised, you could say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was pleasantly surprised, and it had to be better than the last match, which wasn't great by all accounts, which is a shame given the talent involved. Yeah, I mean that's the end now of that, you know, which is good. I just think it had run its course maybe a little too long, you know, and it had achieved its objective 100 times over. So yeah, maybe we didn't need this match, but there were some good spots. And yeah, the tray being broken over the head was great. It makes you immediately question what that tray was made of, which is always good. And yeah, Powerbomb was fantastic. Even the sight of Jericho kind of hanging on to the edge of the pool, you know, as he was dunked in it, that was, you know, it's something that will stay in the memory. I've got no real problem with the match. I just think, yeah, I've seen these two go at it now too many times almost, you know, and I don't want to see Jericho stray too far away from the kind of top end of the card or lose too much credibility, I think, you know, because he did such a good job as champion for so long, you know, so I don't want to see all the credibility knocked out of him. But yeah, good on Orange, you know, he is fantastic. He's so much fun to watch, and I'm pleased he got the win. And yeah, he's got some decent moves as well, so always fun to watch. But that got to be it now for those two.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who their next opponents are, who they pair Jericho up with. Like I said, it'd be nice to see him back towards the top of the card in more of a championship role. And it'd be interesting to see who they pair Orange Cassidy up with next. But let's talk about the main event then, Chris. Jon Moxley, the AEW World Champion, going into this one against MJF. Now, the build to this one has been good. I think it's had a really good build. The We Deserve Better campaign has been entertaining. I think MJF has been excellent as a character in the build to this. There is a bit of a disconnect going into this match for me, however. I can't quite put my finger on it. Maybe in my eyes, I don't see MJF as a legitimate world title contender. I don't know. Or maybe it's more that MJF is more effective as a character as opposed to MJF the wrestler. I don't know. Or maybe he relies too much on Wardlow as the heater on the outside. That maybe that's what a good heel does anyway. So maybe I've just got it wrong, but would you feeling a similar disconnect going into this one? Where was your hype levels, your enthusiasm levels for this world title match going into it, Chris?
Yeah, they're two of my favourite performers, I would say. So I was very excited to see those two go at it, to be honest. I think, unfortunately, I never quite believed MJF would do it until the match was actually happening, which is testament to him. You're right. I think, though, not seeing him in action all the time is the best thing they can do with MJF. You know, he does that brilliantly. And then when it comes to it, he pulls out the goods. So I think they did right to keep him, you know, inactive for so long. His campaign was brilliant. The first kind of speech he did for this whole campaign was just great because it spoke the truth to a point. You know, he had preached about how they had asked for real change with AEW, and so far they'd only much seen the same. And you know, MJF being the lesser known star would have been that new face and that real change, you know, that they wanted for. And you can't argue with that, really. You know, it's sound logic. I love MJF. He's 24. You know, and he's so good at what he does. But yeah, you know, and again, I'll get onto this, but the Moxley problem is it just, I just don't feel like anyone's going to beat him anytime soon. And I think that's Moxley letting the side down there by not making MJF seem legit enough. You know, part of that problem is that he's a bit of a comedy act sometimes, some of the comedy heelish stuff he does. But what they did really well before, you know, All Out was bring that back with the last Dynamite and MJF getting real serious all of a sudden. So I was pretty excited about it. It was the match I was looking forward to, maybe second most excited after the tag match. So yeah, I was pretty pumped about it, and you know, deserving main event.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we're aware, there's no paradigm shifter. Written into the first 16 pages of the contract, there was no paradigm shift, of course, allowed in this match. And if Jon Moxley were to hit the paradigm shift, then he would automatically lose the match and lose the championship. But like I say, I wasn't that hyped for it going into it. You clearly was, but it only takes Justin Roberts to do Jon Moxley's kind of ring intro, and then you're there. You're absolutely there. You're fully invested. Oh man, it is goosebumps, and I was fully there. And Jon Moxley's got an awesome entrance as well, you know. But to go through the match, there's a fantastic dive through the ropes from Jon Moxley, sending MJF hard into the railings at ringside. There's a brief stare down between Moxley and Wardlow at ringside. I don't know if that's a sign of things to come. I certainly hope so. I'm a big fan of Wardlow. MJF goes after Moxley's left arm with like a DDT of the arm and arm DDT down into the ring apron, causing Moxley issues for the rest of the match. MJF targets the left arm heavily throughout the match. Then there's a spot on the outside where Moxley catapults MJF into the ring post. Now, as you will be aware, in AEW they kind of have edges to their ring post, not kind of cylindrical like in WWE. Appearing to cut MJF open after that spot. So now we have both wrestlers debilitated. Moxley hits like a deep six on the outside on MJF. MJF clamps on a salt to the earth move, which Moxley is able to escape from by grabbing hold of the ropes. There's a close near fall from a heat seeker. MJF gets another close near fall from a crossroads, but it was the actions of Wardlow that cost MJF the match at the end when he got up onto the ring apron to throw MJF the Dynamite Dozen championship ring like he does so often in his matches. With the referee distracted, Moxley kind of was quick to react, and with the referee kind of looking the other way, paying more attention to Wardlow, he hit the paradigm shift, hooked the leg just in time for the referee to turn around and count the 3. So I'm sure there's going to be lots said about this on this week's Dynamite. I'm sure MJF is going to want to have the last word on this one. But the referee didn't spot it, so there was no disqualification. So as far as the viewers at home are concerned, it's a valid victory, or we had the 3 count, and we have Moxley regaining or retaining the championship. So like I say, after Justin Roberts' ring introductions, I was fully invested, and the match delivered better than I was expecting. By the end of it, I thought it was a thoroughly good wrestling match. I thought MJF definitely delivered his part. I thought Moxley was great. The only downside for me, though, I thought that Jon Moxley did show a fair bit of vulnerability throughout the match. And maybe, you know, because he suffered that arm DDT on the ring apron, I don't know. But I was expecting him to be more of a killer. But in the end, it was more of an even match than I was expecting between the two. But what about yourself, Chris?
Yeah, I actually think that vulnerability really helped. So far, we've only seen Moxley defend against big guys, as I was saying earlier, like Brody Lee, you know, or Jake Hager. So it was nice to see him actually defend his title against someone smaller than him, which meant the dynamic had to be different because you couldn't have David and Goliath anymore, you know. So he worked a smart match. I'm not sure if you ever saw it, but it reminded me of Triple H and Dean Ambrose, as he was known then. I think it was Roadblock many years ago now, and he really had to wrestle a good, like, old-fashioned match. It reminded me of that in many ways. MJF working over the arm was great. It kind of ran in parallel to Omega's leg getting worked over in that match. I love that as a spot and as a theme. It makes it realistic. It gives you that kind of changeable, you know, elements in the match that you can't pull off certain moves after that. And they played into that. MJF, that was his best match, I think, in AEW. And we haven't seen him wrestle an awful amount, but for me, that was definitely his strongest match. And it was good to see Moxley, do something different, you know, not rely on just kind of this never say die attitude. You know, he had some of that in him, but he had to be smart too. And initially, even though I thought the finish was predictable that the paradigm shift would be used, because again, the moment you say it's not going to get used is the moment it does get used. Having said that, the way they did it protects MJF, because technically Moxley cheated, in the eyes of the rules, and it also gives him a reason to come back on Dynamite and say he cheated, he screwed me out of it. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, nice kind of double switch there at the end. MJF will have his moment. And I think just for like 5-10 minutes, I started to believe that might be the night. It's going to happen sooner or later. And again, testament to him that I've started to believe that. I really did, because I thought he can pull this off here. So a really good match, good finish, even though, maybe slightly predictable, but room for more, I think. And I think it's only a matter of time for MJF, does it, wins the big one. But leading me back to original problem, who does Mox lose that title to, if not him? Because I just don't see it with anyone. He seems to have this invincibility about him, which was nice that they not only played up the injury he had on his arm, but they did show that he is human, and he needs to be smart sometimes, rather than just tough. But yeah, I don't know. And I think, again, they need to be careful of not treating him as someone that's just invincible and unbeatable, because when that finally happens, of course, you don't believe it. It's the kind of Brock Lesnar issue, isn't it? When finally someone beats him, you think, well, why didn't that happen before? But yeah, good match, good title match, good solid wrestling, not too much tomfoolery, pretty simple stuff, but I liked it. Very kind of classic, I would say, that match, with the heel working that one appendage for so long, appendage I should say. So yeah, good strong stuff by MJF. He's 24. Yeah, I can't wait to see what he does for the rest of his career.
Easy. But as I mentioned earlier on, it does look like we've got AEW Full Gear on the 9th of November, so just a couple of months around the corner, Chris. And it looks like we're going to have Lance Archer versus Jon Moxley for the World Heavyweight Championship during that pay-per-view. They've got a couple of months to build it. I'd say they did do Lance Archer a disservice by having him lose to Cody in that championship, TNT Championship match. And maybe Lance Archer either should have won the championship or not been in the tournament at all, really, to protect him, because he was such a dominant monster beforehand. He has had to do a lot of work alongside Jake Roberts to rebuild that reputation and to rebuild that dominance, which I'm happy to say he has in my eyes, and I'm sure he has in your eyes as well. Certainly capping it off with that Battle Royal win last night. But I think he's going to be a good challenger. Once again, I don't know whether he'll win. Let's say Jon Moxley has been a very dominant champion, but it will also be quite upsetting to see Lance Archer lose again. Now, of course, that's another match for 2 months down the line, so we can discuss that at a later date. And potentially, it looks like we've got FTR versus the Young Bucks as another match for that pay-per-view 2 months down the line. But let me ask you, Chris, what was your favourite match of the night from AEW All Out then?
Yeah, easily the tag match for the titles. It was always going to be the best match, I think. It did follow on from the match at Revolution, I think, and we almost expected it to be the best match of the night. So for me, the psychology behind it, the long-term storytelling, the realism that FTR brought to it, which goes, nicely, as you said, to counter the dynamic of Page and Omega, which they're big, flashy, high-impact moves. For me, that match had everything. Deserving winners with room to continue. So for me, match of the night.
Yeah, and I would have to agree with that as well. But I really enjoyed the main event. I quite enjoyed the Mimosa Mayhem match as well. But if I were to choose a kind of a match in second place for me, Shida versus Thunder Rosa is definitely up there. I really, really enjoyed that. I thought Thunder Rosa was fantastic, made a great impression on me, and I'm sure she made a great impression on all the other fans and AEW executives, you would hope. But Chris, it's been great having you back on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and great to talk AEW with you as always. Before we let you go, do you want to throw out any plugs as to where we can find you on social media, or get in touch with yourself and the Turnbuckle Arms guys on Twitter and Instagram? So the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, Twitter is at CTOFA82. And if you don't like spoilers, do not look at my Twitter today, because you'll see an awful lot of them from last night. Mostly it's a lot of wrestling stuff on there. You can also find me as part of the Brood, the Turnbuckle Arms podcast, as John alluded to earlier. You'll find that all over traditional streaming platforms and where you'll find it. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, so you can't miss us. I'm very much all about supporting that cause at the moment, and of course, Wrestling with Johners, which continues to grow and evolve. And I have to say, John, it's been a real pleasure to watch your continued growth. It's supposed to be about me right now, but I'm putting you over. But I think it's worth saying. So long may that continue. But yeah, as for me, mostly CTOFA82. If you like Simpsons and wrestling, which I do.
Awesome. We'll make sure that all of them links are added to the description of this podcast. But thanks for coming back on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, Chris. And we'll have to book you in for a couple of months' time and get you on the Full Gear review.
Yeah, that should be a better pay-per-view by the sounds of it, actually. You know, that could be the one that All Out really should have been, I think. So it sounds really exciting to me. So yeah, I look forward to it. And yeah, while it may not have been the best pay-per-view that AEW have done, you know, it certainly wasn't bad at all. And again, just a reminder, this company is not very old at all. So look at what they've done so far. And I think they will only continue to grow. And yeah, so with that, I hope to be back on talking about Full Gear.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris, for coming on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and thanks for everybody for listening or watching this episode. And yeah, we'll catch you all again soon.